Hi there, this is Lou Covey, Editorial Director of New Tech Press and the CEO of Footwasher Media, and we're here today with Joe Vasquez, the Vice President of our operation, and we're doing another one of our irregular Hangouts today. We're talking about content strategy and how it might be affecting strategy for corporations. And Joe, I want to kick it off with you because you found some interesting information this week. What was it?
Well, there was a survey by the B2B Marketers Institute that said basically 99% of corporations are using a combination of in-house and outsourced material for their content. And I wanted to find out from you, first of all, why you think they're doing that, and is there a benefit to doing that?
Yeah. I think you might say that there is a benefit to that because most people in-house don't know how to do content. That's what it comes down to. We've talked in the past about how most companies unintentionally plagiarize themselves and other competitors with their content so that there's no differentiation from one company to another about the content. So you have to get somebody from the outside in order to give a fresh perspective on the content you're developing. And that's kind of a self-serving statement to make because that's what we do at Footwasher Media is we develop content. But overall, what I'm hearing from similar surveys is that while that's going on, most companies are actually unhappy with the results of their content strategy. And it's affecting everything else that they do. It's making their social media programs worse. It's making their public relations programs worse, advertising, trade shows. I'm hearing again and again that companies go in and the salesmen say, yeah, we make great leads at these trade shows, but when the marketing people actually look at them, they're the same people as they were the year before.
Right.
They're selling to the same people again and again. So yeah, they have to make some sort of change to how they do content. What have you found in that?
It's actually really interesting in the way that you describe that, because what I've actually seen in the last, I'd say 6 months, is a real significant change in that when I talk to salespeople versus marketing people, they get the content thing. They say, one of their most significant challenges right now is to break into accounts that are outside of what they've already got. So they understand the value of content and how it works. The biggest challenge we have is it doesn't come from their budget to pay for outsourced material from the sales budget. But the sales guys, they get it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the sales guys don't control the budgets, do they?
Right. Right.
Yeah. And that comes into something else that I discovered this week, or actually last week. It was when Facebook came out with their announcement that essentially said, we're going to punish people on Facebook who are putting up bad content. Now, that has nothing to do just with commercial accounts, although it affects commercial accounts more so than anyone else. What they're saying is look, if all people are doing is posting your stuff with obviously they're not reading it, and then people are complaining because they see the same meme over and over again, well, we're going to reduce your visibility on Facebook dramatically. And I've seen complaint after complaint after complaint from marketing people who are pissed off about that, saying, we've invested a lot of time, effort, and money into developing these messages. and we need these messages to be going out to people. Well, unfortunately, those people don't want to hear those messages. They're useless to people. And that's kind of something that I've been trying to work around, and I came up with this phrase today based on Marshall McLuhan's concept of the medium as a message, that the content is the conversation. That's what needs to happen in content. It needs to drive a conversation, and your content is going to be developed out of that conversation. It's a circular thing.
So I know typically we talk about content and conversation, but I intentionally didn't look at the announcement from Facebook because I wanted to hear your description of it and probably have some questions like other people would. So my first question to you is, why does Facebook even care if a company has content?
Because Facebook has discovered that the crap content on the news feeds is hurting their bottom line. That's what it comes down to. Yeah, people have found, they're saying over and over again that all the money that they're investing in Facebook is not making a return on their investment. Yeah, it's even less than mobile advertising, which is a whole other issue. But what they've discovered is that people are their input, because every time you see a piece of content, a sponsored content that comes up in your news feed, or any kind of content whatsoever, you can actually click in the upper right-hand corner and on a little caret mark, and it'll open up this box that will tell you, give you the option to say, I don't want to see this anymore, and give them some feedback on why. And most people are saying, I don't want to see this because it's garbage. And
so that's my next question, actually, is why do we need this algorithm? Isn't this something that can be done manually now? I mean,
well, the thing is that yes, you need the algorithm, but the algorithm has been derived from the comments of the users. So they're saying, okay, our users are getting pissed off. They're hearing the stories that people are saying they're leaving Facebook. And they got 1.5 billion people using it. So what happens if 15 million people leave? Not a whole lot. Doesn't really mean anything. But they're looking down the road because they've got a bigger objective, and that's to actually be able to transmit the conversation. And they're not going to be able to do that if people are leaving in droves. So what they're doing is they're actually listening to the users, even though the users don't realize they're being listened to, and they're making changes in how this stuff works. So the answer, well, as I said, the marketers are complaining about this because they say, this is how we do things. Well, we've talked about this in the past, Joe, that in the 20th century, yes, pounding the message into the customer was the way to do it because there was a limited number of avenues for media. Well, now there are multiple avenues for media, and people can ignore those messages, and that's what they're doing. So in order to get back the attention of those people, you've got to start creating content that they want to listen to. The audience is creating the messages, and you just have to go out there and find it.
And that kind of leads us full circle back to being able to look outside of what you're used to doing and using your usual messages, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the messages don't work, but what's happening is you can find out what your customers really want. Actually, here's a better analogy of it. It was somebody posted on my Facebook feed about how we are working for our tools now. We're not working for people or each other. We're working for our tools. When you look at the semiconductor world, that makes complete sense because we're in the process of, that industry is in the process of creating more tools in order to make more semiconductors without ever really giving much thought to where those semiconductors are going to be used in the end. And that's where the lost message is right now, because the people that are using the semiconductors in the end are not the people that are making the systems. They're the people that are using the systems. And those people are saying, we don't like what we're getting anymore. And we're going to find ways around it. That's why they're trying to use software now, and why they're looking into social media and looking into cloud computing. And if the semiconductor industry is ever going to pull out of their doldrums, which they're in right now, I was just reading, there was a report that's saying less than half a dozen of the companies in the semiconductor industry represent more than half of all the revenue development and corporate wealth in the industry. And even they are starting to see some weaknesses in their cash flow. And it's going to hit them really hard until they start realizing that what they're making is not for the system manufacturers. It's for the people in the end. And that's where the stories are coming out of. That's where your content comes from.
I think ultimately what you're talking about too is a really scary thing, especially for old entrenched companies. I mean, we've dealt with this on several different companies, and not just in semiconductors. We've dealt with it in retail as well. They just don't want to change the way they're doing things.
Yeah.
But ultimately, if you don't, you're going down a dead-end road. And we've actually talked to companies who we've come in and consulted with them and told them, you're on the completely wrong track. And they've actually redeveloped their business strategy and model based on what we told them and feedback that they were able to get. So it is a scary thing to do, but ultimately it's either do it or die.
Yeah. There was that book that I thought was the stupidest book I'd ever heard in my life until I suddenly realized it was absolutely right. It was called Who Moved My Cheese? Where people get used to being in one particular area for the longest time. And, it's not just in the area of communication and marketing and advertising and that sort of thing. It comes down to basic business now. We hear stories again and again how companies say, we've come up with a great product that actually saves the company money. They say it over and over again. It reduces your cost of doing X by 10x. Well, maybe that's true, but they have no way to prove it. And because they have no way to prove it, they can't sell that to the other people who are having the same problem but actually have the same story. I mean, even when we demonstrate to people how we've actually helped a company make money on their content, even though content's not what they sell, they still don't believe it because it's not how they used to do things. But I think it's changing. I think we're seeing a sea change in the attitudes of companies because they realize this stuff isn't working anymore. But it is the development of content is now at the core of everything companies do. And until they understand that, their programs are not going to be successful.
And I think that is the key element that people need to take away from this entire conversation, is that your content has to be at the core of everything. It's not just communications anymore. It's in the way you design the company. And if they can take that away and understand what that actually means, because that means you have to have the buy-in from everybody above you and everybody around you. Everyone has to be on board with that.
Yeah. And so with that, I wanted to keep this at less than 15 minutes, and we're almost there. I wanted to thank everyone who hasn't yet seen this, but has signed up and said they want to. It's going to be available on YouTube, and I'll make the link available. Please send us questions, because this is a conversation that needs to go on for a lot longer. So this has been Lou Covey and Joe Basquez from Footwasher Media. Thanks for listening.